how to find zeros. Okay, now we're about to get a mathematical definition of something, and students will get confused about this because they are thinking about the number 0, which is involved, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not just talking about the number 0. Okay, so here's the definition. So you really need to go back over this definition. A 0 of a function is an x value that produces a y value equal to 0. So that is a definition that you need to know. What is a 0 of a function? It's an x value that produces 0. Remember, x is our input. So that's another way you could write it. A 0 is an input value that produces 0 as an output value. So what we're going to do first is we're going to find zeros algebraically, and then I'm going to show you how to do it on the calculator. Okay. So the first one is 2. The function is, the way you find the output is 2 plus 6/7 x. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace y. Remember, f of x or g of x or whatever your function name is of x, that is your y. We want to know how to get 0 for that output. So what we're going to do is we're going to solve this equation. We're going to find out what x produces 0. Okay, I want to get rid of the fraction first. If you subtracted the 2 first, that's fine. That works as well. But I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. Why am I doing that? Because I want to get rid of that fraction. So I get 0 equals 14 plus 6x, because 7 times 6/7 would cancel the 7. And maybe it would have been easier if I just subtracted the 2 first. I'll let you guys do that at home that way. Okay, and see, you can do the same thing. All right, so I'm going to subtract 14. I'm just trying to get x by itself. And then what? Divide by 6. And we get x equals, we're going to reduce that. That would be negative 7/3. So negative 7/3 is a 0 of this function. It is the only 0. It is the number that makes the y come out to 0. Yeah?
Where did that 7 come from? Like, up there?
I'm just solving. I'm regretting that decision right now, but because I didn't mean to throw anybody off there. I probably should have subtracted the 2, and then I think you would have seen it easier.
Where's the 7 coming from? From the 6?
Remember, if you have an equation, you can multiply both sides of that equation by anything you want. So I wanted to multiply by 7. The reason I wanted to multiply by 7 is I didn't like that fraction. I wanted to do the whole thing without my calculator.
So you did it
Okay.
with the denominator.
Yeah, just clearing it out. Okay. But I don't want us to get lost on the point here, which is we're finding zeros of the function. So look at what we found, okay? Find g of negative 7/3. Okay, so I'm going back up there. That's 2 plus 6/7 times negative 7/3. I've just plugged in negative 7/3 for x. I'm just demonstrating what it is we found. That is 2 plus, okay, y'all see the 7s canceling? Everybody see that? And then 3 goes into itself once and into 6 twice. This was a negative here. So 2 minus 2 is what, or 2 plus negative 2 is what we have. Everybody see that? What's 2 plus negative 2? 0. So that's the point. We figured out the number that makes the function give an output of 0.
Can you do the canceling out of the fractions?
Oh, I don't want to get hung up on fractions, y'all. You want to use your calculator for it?
I mean, yeah, I did. I just want to.
Okay, the 7s, and then 3 goes into itself once and into 6 twice. Okay, but you can also use your fraction key on your calculator. Remember, if you're going into trig, make yourself work with the fractions. Okay, but if you're not, just use your calculator. Okay, now let's find the zeros for this function. So what is it I'm going to solve? Yeah, you just want to replace your function, or your y, with 0. And then you've got to solve. We're using algebra to answer a different question. Okay? So I'm going to factor. Check my factor in there. Okay, the middle works. Set your factors equal to 0. Oh, does that, yeah. Oh, it didn't work, did it? Okay. Did somebody else figure out the correct factoring? 4 and 10. 4 and 10. Thank you. Okay, I'm really bad today. That is 3 mistakes. Y'all are going to pack up and go home early. Okay. X minus 4. X. I told you to check my factoring, right? You did. Okay. Set them equal to 0. We get 4 and 10. They are the zeros of Q of X. So what happens if I plug in 0? If I plug in 4 or I plug in 10, what happens? I should get 0. That's what it means to be a 0 of a function. Okay, and real quick, one more, because I want to show you the calculator.
So when you write your answer, would you it's just 4 and 10?
Yes, it's just 4 and 10. 4 and 10 are the zeros. Functions are not the same thing as equations, but a lot of times to answer questions about functions, we are solving equations. Okay, so this is the function rule. It has a picture. We're going to be talking about that too. But the only thing we just did was we figured out the numbers that make it 0. And they have a name. They are called the zeros of the function. Okay, so real quick. Oh, I didn't realize I had this many. Okay. I am a little bit behind here. You're going to solve that. I'm going to use square root property. We get plus or minus square root of 3. So there's 2 zeros. The square root of 3 and the negative square root of 3. What about this one, guys? Is there any way for that to happen? That has no zeros. Now, next week, when we review lines, we'll be looking at that. But what that is the line that's horizontal at 11. Okay? No zeros means it never crosses the x-axis because that's where y is 0. So that's a picture of what we're talking about. Okay, now I'm going to have to go through this one rather quickly. Okay, but you did this in R. You did this in Module R with the solvent equations. If you'll take x cubed plus 14x squared plus 48x and set it equal to 0, we just did, GCF, we just did something similar a little while ago. Then we pull out x. We get x squared plus 14x plus 48. Help me factor correctly this time. Okay, 8 and 6. Work. And notice this time 0 is a 0. 0 doesn't have to be a 0 of a function, but it can be. And you can see, if you plug in 0 for the x's, you're definitely going to produce 0 for y. Okay, and then what are the other two numbers? Right, -8, and the other one is -6. So there's your zeros. 0, -8, and -6 are the zeros. Okay. All right, so on a calculator, we're just going to do one of these, or this is a graph actually. And I think in your homework they give you some of your graphs. This point right here is the point -3, 0. -3 is producing a y value of 0. And so -3 is the 0 of that function. Okay? Y'all are going to have to give me my extra 4 minutes today. I mean, I'm not keeping you over. We have till 3:15. I've got to squeeze it in. Okay? So, how are these zeros related to the x-intercepts? Well, if -3 is a 0, then the point -3, 0 is an x-intercept. It's a little bit of a ticky point there. If you're asked for, and be careful in your homework, if they ask you for the zeros, you're just giving the x values. If they ask you for x-intercepts, do you guys remember what an intercept is? It's where the graph crosses an axis, okay? So if it's an x-intercept, you need to give the point.
So just give...
They're the same, right? It's just the way you're answering is different. You're saying -3 is a 0 because it's an x value that makes y 0. But the x-intercept for that 0 would be the x-intercept -3, 0. It's a point. Okay? And like I said, you can find these on your calculator. And I've got all the steps written out. And so what I'm going to do, if you guys will just let me do this myself, you could always go zip through the video and get to the end and watch this demonstrated more slowly for you, okay? So let me just do it, and then you can practice it at home, because you're going to have some that you have to do by using the calculator. Okay, so the y equals key is where you type in graphs. And so I'm typing in the one that's in your notes, x cubed plus 1.2, because you couldn't find that one algebraically, very easily anyway. So I'm going to do x is the variable key right here, power 3 plus 1.2. And then I'm going to hit zoom 6. And what zoom 6 does is it puts my window in what's called the standard window. -10 to 10 this direction and -10 to 10 that direction is what you're looking at. Now, this is where the 0 is. You can estimate it. It looks like it's a little bit to the left of -1. The way you find it is you go second trace. And see where it says 0? You make that choice. So I did, number 2, okay? Now, here you've got to think left, right. Everybody see where it is? I've got to get that blinking light over to the left of that. So I go to the left. And notice I can tell that to the left of the 0, the function is below the x-axis, which means the y is negative. So if you're having trouble seeing where it is, that's what you're looking at. You press enter. Then you have to, it'll say right bound. You have to go to the right of that 0. And for it to work for a 0, it has to change sign. Notice that y is now positive. Why? Because negative to positive means it's gone through the x-axis. enter. Now when it says guess, just enter again. And it will say the word 0. Notice y is 0. Sometimes it'll be some really small number, like it'll say 1.5 times 10 to the negative 10 or something. That's 0. But here's your number. And so then you just round how they say, and in this one it said 3 decimals. So it's negative 1.063. Okay? So that's how you do it with the calculator. And you guys can look back. And I'll see you next time for all about functions and the next section after that.